And my Canadian cousins do not have to worry about this. They go to school for free, mostly. And so this all begs the question, why can't college be free? It is other places. Bernie Sanders really believes that it can be, and he believes in the power of education. He knows that college offers students those ladders of opportunity that lead to job offers and internships and research and collaboration and bright futures in the workforce of America. He also understands the promise of America's community colleges, which are essential to so many students' higher education plans. In today's economy and job market, college is not optional. Many entry-level jobs require a bachelor's degree, and that's just a symptom of a changing economic landscape, but we can't charge out the nose for something we expect everybody to have. College isn't an optional luxury anymore. You don't just need it if you're going to law school or med school or business school. And there are those out there who don't qualify for student loans because their families make too much money. FAFSA seems to think that your entire salary goes to your children's college tuition. That's not true. And then there's families who can't get loans because, they have bad credit. And there's families that even if they get loans, they get grants, they still can't afford college because college is more than tuition. There's books, there's housing, there's meal plans, there's lab fees, there's activity fees, there's computers, and so many other things that college students need. We need storage bins, we need things for our walls, we need lots of things. So we're pricing so many Americans out of the chance to continue their education, pursue their dreams, and by extension, we're pricing out of them advancing in the workforce. Those without college educations can be passed over for jobs, they don't get promotions, they don't move up the ladder the way that they could. And I believe that by creating free college or making college more affordable, we give those people a chance to live a better life. College will open doors for them and give them education and experience they need to succeed in America's changing economic community. And Senator Sanders' legislation to make tuition free at public universities and colleges does it by imposing a tax on Wall Street. And it's just the kind of action this country needs. Senator Sanders understands that the future of America lies in students and young people and not in Wall Street corporations. And that's why I'm here. I want Bernie Sanders to be the 2016 Democratic nominee, and I want him to take the White House in November 2016. And it starts with us, starts with all of us. We have to get out there, we have to campaign, and most importantly, we have to vote. As a political science major, voting, cornerstone of American democracy, it's pretty important. And we fought for that right to vote, and we need to use it to bring about the change that this government needs. And that change is Bernie Sanders, and I believe he will invest in American students so that everyone can reach the American dream. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Megan brought up an important point, voting. Just 3 weeks ago, America celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act, all across America. And the Voting Rights Act was the Civil Rights Movement's landmark legislation. And 3 weeks ago during that celebration, all across this country, we acknowledged just how far we have come. But the Supreme Court's 2013 decision gutting the Voting Rights Act, that was a shameful step backwards. Today, we know our voting rights, as well as our family values, the quality of education, and Black lives are under attack. We know we still have work to do in this country, and we need people we trust leading us to get the work done, do we not? We need new voices that are not afraid to speak truth about the injustices that are plaguing people of color and the plight of everyday, hard-working Americans. We need people who know the critical civil rights laws which protected voters in places with a history of discrimination is as necessary today as it was during the Jim Crow era. We need people who understand economic inequality and racial inequality are parallel issues that must be addressed simultaneously. We need people who are committed to justice and criminal justice systems. So we're not locking up an entire generation, but instead we are ending the disgrace that is the mass incarceration of African Americans in this country. We need people who truly believe and are working to ensure every young person in this country receives a shot at equality and affordable education. People like Bernie Sanders. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and my pleasure right now to welcome to the stage the next President of the United States of America, United States Senator Bernie Sanders.
Sumter, thank you very much. What a wonderful turnout. And let me thank Phil Levinas and Megan Taylor and Simone Sanders for those very generous words of introduction. I am delighted to be here because what we're going to do today is we're going to do something very radical. You ready for something radical? We're going to practice democracy. Oh my God! I know, all right, it's a pretty radical idea, but what the heck? So what I'm going to do is chat for a little while about some of the most important issues facing the country. Then I'm going to stop. We have some microphones over here. You'll ask me some questions, and that will be that. Let me begin by saying a few words about our campaign. We began this campaign almost 4 months ago, and I think it's fair to say that very few people outside of my own state of Vermont, and by the way, I want to welcome all of you to come to Vermont. It's a lot cooler in the summer than it is here. And if you're into skiing, we got some good downhill ski areas. But outside of Vermont, I think it's fair to say that not a whole lot of people knew much about a senator from a small state. But I think that's changed in the last 3 or 4 months. And what we have seen, not only here in a small town like Sumter, which is about the size of my hometown of Burlington, Vermont, but we saw it yesterday in Greenville, we saw it in Columbia, we have seen it all over this country. Last week or so, 10 days or so, we were on the West Coast. We had 28,000 people out in Portland, Oregon. That's where the Portland Trailblazers play. You know, it was a little amazing going out there and seeing people on the third deck of a huge stadium out there. And we had 27,000 people out in Los Angeles. And, you know, media asks me, but what's going on? And it's not just the large turnouts that we are having. It's how we are raising money. I think all of you are familiar with the fact that right now, as a result of the Citizens United decision, super PACs are the main means by which most candidates raise money. So what happens, what politics becomes about is not candidates coming before people just discussing issues. It's figuring out, gee, which millionaire or billionaire do I know who can pour millions of dollars into my campaign? Well, we are one of the very few campaigns that does not have a super PAC, does not want a super PAC. My agenda and what I'm going to be talking about today, and my life's work, is not about representing the interest of millionaires and billionaires. I was born in a family, never had a lot of money. I understand that in politics, essentially, you know, you're on one side or the other. You're going to be on the side of the people who have the money and the power, or are you on the side of working people who are struggling? I have always chosen to be on the side of working people. So we don't get millions of dollars from billionaires. This is... That's right. This man got it. Exactly right. That's the story of modern politics. You collect money from millionaires and billionaires. Why do you think they make those contributions? Guess they're nice guys? They want something, and I will tell you in a minute what they want. But we have raised, you know, have we raised our money? We have raised money from 400,000 Americans, and do you know what the average contribution is? $31.20. How's that? So, you know, the media, who in the beginning of this campaign said, well, you know, Sanders is an interesting guy, but obviously he's too radical. It's a fringe campaign. Who in America thinks, like Sanders, that we should have a political revolution that takes on the billionaire class? Well, turns out there are more people who believe that than the media thought. Who believes in America? Bernie's crazy idea that there's something wrong, that almost all of the new income and wealth are going to the top 1%. Who thinks that that's wrong? Well, turns out a lot of Americans think that's wrong, and that's why the campaign has been generating, I think, a lot of excitement and a lot of enthusiasm. And what the campaign is about is bringing people together, white and black and Hispanic, middle class and working families, lower income people. And by the way, we have 45 million people in this country who are living in poverty. Very few politicians talk about poverty. I will talk about poverty. And the main point, one of the main points of our campaign is, yes, these guys have incredible amounts of money and they have incredible amounts of power and they own corporate media, fine. The only way that I know that we can beat them, the only way that I know that we can do the things that have to be done for the middle class and working class of this country is when we stand together. Now, in South Carolina, but it's certainly true not just in South Carolina, what the history of politics is people playing off whites against blacks, right? People playing off gays against straight, men against women, people who are born in this country against people who immigrated. That's how they divide us up. That's how they divide us up. But at the end of the day, when we stand together, they may have the money and the power, we have the people, and there's nothing we can't accomplish. The people of the United States are angry, and they have reason to be angry. They understand that corporate greed, the desire of these major multinational corporations and the wealthiest people to be concerned about nobody else but themselves, that greed is destroying this country. And they understand that American politics is now dominated by big money interests. And as the gentleman here said, when billionaires put money into a campaign, yeah, they want something. Well, what I want to see, I know it's a radical idea, is what about a government that represents the vast majority of the people rather than big campaign donors? And there's another issue that has to be talked about, and that is the role of corporate media in this country. Media will talk about everything except the most important issues facing working people, and that's got to change as well. Let me make another point that I think no other candidate for president will make, and it's a serious point, and I'm not happy to have to make it, but it is a truthful point. In my view, no president of the United States, not Bernie Sanders, not anybody else, will be able to do all of the things that have to be done to transform America unless there is a strong grassroots movement all over America, a political revolution. Now, why do I say that? Let me give you an example. Barack Obama is a friend of mine. In 2006, and somebody I respect immensely, somebody I believe that history will judge a lot better than his contemporaries have. As all of you know, in 2008, Barack Obama ran one of the great campaigns in the history of the United States of America. He started off way, way behind African American running for president. You got to be kidding. And yet he mobilized people all over this country, created an enthusiasm and excitement that had not been seen for many, many years. Now, what was the mistake that Barack Obama made? The mistake is, because he is a decent guy, he believed that he could get into the White House and then start negotiating with right-wing Republicans. And he believed, look, we're not going to get it all, but we're going to sit down, we're going to reach some kind of decent compromise. He was wrong in two regards. Number one, right-wing Republicans never, ever, ever had any intention of negotiating with him. Their goal was to obstruct, and I'm in the Senate, I saw it firsthand, almost impossible to get anything done without 60 votes, delay. But here is the second mistake that he made, and that is the powers that be, and I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but this is the simple truth. The powers that be in Washington, corporate America, Wall Street, big campaign donors, the Koch brothers, all of these guys have so much power over the legislative process that no president, not Obama, not Sanders, not anybody else, can get it done unless tens of millions of people are standing up loudly and clearly and saying, enough is enough. So I say to you very honestly, I'm going to demand more from you than any other candidate. Yes, I need your support to win here in South Carolina and to win this election. But that is not enough. I cannot do it alone. You have got to be with me in the campaign, but if you think you're going to disappear the day after the election, you are mistaken. We've got to do this together. Now let me take a few minutes to talk about what I consider to be the major issues facing our country. And at the top of my list is the issue of income and wealth inequality. Today, we live in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. But guess what? Nobody knows that. Why is that? Because people are working 2 or 3 jobs. People are struggling and figuring out how to send their kids to childcare. The reason that people don't know that we are living in the wealthiest country in the history of the world is that almost all of the wealth and the income is going to the top 1%. And that together, we have got to change. We need an economy that works for all of us, not just a handful of wealthy people. Now, I don't want to bore you with numbers, but it's important to know this, and I want you to think about whether this is the kind of country we should be. Today in America, the top 1/10 of 1%, not 1%, top 1/10 of 1% owns almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. You think that's what America should be? I don't think so. What we have seen over the last 30 years, the Republicans get very nervous about redistribution of wealth. You have your own, it's a terrible thing. They want to redistribute wealth. Well, guess what? What do you think has happened in America in the last 30 years? There has been a huge redistribution of wealth. The only problem is that redistribution has gone the wrong way. If you look at a pie chart, what you will find is the top 1/10 of 1% has seen a doubling of the wealth they own in America, while the middle class's percentage has significantly gone down. Trillions of dollars shifted from working families to the top 1/10 of 1%. Today in America, I want you to think about it, we have more income and wealth disparity than any other major country on earth. All right, England has the Queen of England and dukes and lords. We have more income and wealth disparity than the United Kingdom or any other country. And it is worse today than at any time since 1928. So this gap between the very, very rich and everybody else is growing wider and wider, and it is time for us to turn that around. Everybody in America deserves a fair shake. And let me, if I might, bring this issue of income and wealth disparity right here to South Carolina. It's an issue that impacts Vermont. It's an issue that impacts every state in the country. But let me just talk about how it impacts your beautiful state. In the last 2 years, I want you to hear this. It's really quite incredible. In the last 2 years, the 14 wealthiest people in America saw their wealth increase by $156 billion. All right? You can do the arithmetic yourself. 14 people, $156 billion, 2-year period. Meanwhile, here in South Carolina, 27% of the children in this state are living in poverty. Almost 300,000 kids are living in poverty. 14 people saw an increase in their wealth of $156 billion. And here's another point to be made. Of the children living in poverty in South Carolina, 138,000 are black, 95,000 are white, 34,000 are Hispanic. This issue of childhood poverty and poverty in general impacts every race, and we've got to stand together to change it. And what we have got to ask ourselves is, what are the values of our country today? What is our sense of national priorities when you have thousands of children in South Carolina who literally do not have enough food to eat? You have kids and parents where parents are going to work, very hard to find affordable, decent childcare. Education system totally inadequate. Just talking to a member of your state legislature. You have vast majority of low-income working class families cannot afford to send their kids to college, or they're going to leave school deeply in debt. What kind of priorities is it where you have so many families struggling for the most basic needs, putting food on the table, educating their kids, providing decent housing, when a handful of people in 2 years saw a $156 billion increase in their wealth? Those are priorities, those are values that have to be changed. We do not want to continue living in a country which has by far the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. Let's pay attention to our kids. They are the future of America. And when we are talking about human rights and basic needs, let's say a word about health care. I know that many of you know there is one major country in the industrialized world that does not guarantee health care to all people as a right. What country is that? You got it. You're living in it. Now, I live in Burlington, Vermont. It is 100 miles away from Canada. 100 miles away. Canada, every man, woman, and child has health care as a right. Has been the case for decades. Not a big deal. That's what people assume. You go to Germany, everybody has health care. You go to the United Kingdom, France, Germany, everybody has health care. You go to Denmark, Sweden, Finland, everybody has health care. Well, in my view, the time is long overdue for this country to join the rest of the industrialized world and guarantee health care to all people as a right. And I want you all just to think, I know it is a hard idea because people don't, see what goes on around the rest of the world. How many people do we all know who have delayed going to the doctor? They're sick. Maybe they're feeling heart problems. They delay going to the doctor. And then 6 months later, they walk into the doctor's office. And the doctor says, why didn't you come in 6 months ago? You're really sick. And I have talked to many doctors who say that people delay going to the doctor because they don't have insurance or because they have high deductibles. And you know what happens to those people? Sometimes they die. We lose thousands and thousands of people every year who die because they don't walk into the doctor's office when they should. Or maybe they walk in and it turns out they have to get hospitalized when they could have been treated much more easily if they walked in when they should have. All right. I happen to believe that the U.S. should join the rest of the world. That is why I believe in a Medicare for all single-payer program. In the 1960s, under Lyndon B. Johnson, what the country stated is that our elderly people must have health care, and that was a good decision. That decision now should be expanded to every man, woman, and child. But, all right, I am a little bit more progressive than your senators, just a little bit, and most of the other members of the Senate. So people are not where I am today. But, as you all know, a few years ago, we did pass the Affordable Care Act. And by the way, that's right. And by the way, in that act, I worked with your congressman, South Carolina Congressman Jim Clyburn, on a very important issue, and that is the expansion of community health centers. Community health centers exist all over your state and my state. People can walk in the door regardless of their income, get health care. Dental care, a big issue here in South Carolina? All right, a lot of people in my state can't afford to get dental care. We're making some progress on that. Mental health counseling, a big issue? All right, we're making a little bit of progress on that. Low-cost prescription drugs, big issue. All right, the drug companies rip us off right and left, charge the American people the highest prices in the world. That's an issue we've got to deal with as well. But in any case, we passed the Affordable Care Act. I'm on the committee that helped write the bill. And the full expectation was, until the Supreme Court came along and said differently, that every state in the country would fully implement all aspects of the Affordable Care Act, including the expansion of Medicaid. Well, it turns out, as you know better than I, that your governor, your legislature, as well as many, many other governors and legislatures in Republican states, put ideology, a rigid right-wing ideology, in front of, before the needs of their people. So right here in South Carolina, over 200,000 people would gain health insurance, 200,000 people, if the governor and legislature would approve the expansion of Medicaid. And by the way, on top of all of that, state would create tens of thousands of decent paying jobs. And on top of that, the bill would be paid almost entirely by the federal government. Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. In my view, it is tragically wrong for the governor and legislature here and in other states to put their right-wing ideology in front of the needs of their people. Let's be clear. Let's make no mistake about it. People in South Carolina and in other states who have not benefited from the expansion of Medicaid will die in this state by the hundreds because of that decision. Others will become much sicker and suffer because of that decision. And I would appeal to your governor and your legislature, overcome your dislike of President Obama. You'll dislike him, that's fine, that's your business. But don't punish the people of the state because of your politics. But the issue that we are addressing front and center is not just the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality and the need to change that. It is also the situation regarding employment and jobs in America. So let me tell you something that you may know, you may not know. Every month, the United States government comes out with a set of statistics, different statistics on unemployment. And the report that the media most often picks up on is what they call official unemployment. Official. Official unemployment is now about 5.3%. Does anyone here think that that really reflects what real unemployment is? You're a smart group of people. Okay? There is another government statistic which includes people who are unemployed, people who have given up looking for work, and most significantly, millions of Americans who are working part-time. Do you know people are working part-time when they want to work full-time? Add all of that together, real unemployment in America is about 10.5%. Very serious problem. But now let me tell you something which nobody talks about, which is an even more serious problem. What about youth unemployment? Is that an issue? It is a huge issue. We asked the Economic Policy Institute to do a study on youth unemployment. Here's the study. We looked at kids who are high school graduates, not dropouts, high school graduates between the age of 17 and 20, okay? 19-year-old kid, 18-year-old kid graduates high school. Where's this kid going? If this kid is white, real unemployment and underemployment, 33%. If the kid is Hispanic, real unemployment, 36%. If the kid is African American, real unemployment, 51%. It is disgraceful. It is turning our backs on an entire generation of young people. What do kids want? Go to high school, they want some independence, they want a job, they want to stand up on their own 2 feet, they want to get away from their parents, they want to begin their lives as adults. That's a good thing. And yet these kids cannot find jobs. And if anybody thinks that it is an accident or a coincidence that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, and that it's not related to unemployment, you would be mistaken. Now, in my view, and I believe this from the bottom of my heart, It is not only the moral thing to do, but it is the economically sensible thing to do. To start investing in education and jobs for the kids rather than jail and incarceration. Even if you don't have a heart and you don't care about what happens to young kids who go to jail, if you're only concerned about money, understand it's cheaper to send people to the University of South Carolina than to lock them up in jail. Now, when we talk about what's going on in this country, not just income and wealth inequality, not just high unemployment rates, it has to do with a very simple fact. And that is that millions of Americans are working at wages which are just too damn low. There are millions of people in my state, and I know here in South Carolina, people are not working one job. They're working two jobs. Sometimes they're working three jobs. I was in Detroit last year. Never forget it. Talking to a group of kids. They were working three jobs at fast food restaurants for $7.25 an hour. They're working three jobs. They couldn't even get full time. 20 hours here, 10 hours there, 10 hours there, 20 hours there. Okay? The simple truth is that the federal minimum wage of $7.25 an hour is a starvation wage. It's got to be raised to a living wage. And to my mind, that living wage over a period of a few years should be $15 an hour. You know, it is not a radical idea to say that if somebody works 40 hours a week in the United States of America, that person should not be living in poverty. And when I talk to teachers here in South Carolina, I'm not going to tell you it's all that much better in Vermont. It's bad all over this country. I talk to teachers, I talk to police officers, telling me that police officers start working in South Carolina in cases $27,000, $28,000 a year. That's wrong. We need to pay our workers decent wages, decent income. And by the way, when we talk about wages and income, we have got to be understanding, and I hope every man here will stand with the women and fight for pay equity for women workers. You know that here in South Carolina and in my state of Vermont, all over this country, there are huge numbers of women working, and I don't know how they do it. I don't know how you do it as a single mom. People working incredible hours trying to raise their kids in dignity. The least that we can do for those women is make sure they do not continue to make 78 cents on the dollar compared to men. Now, I know here in South Carolina, a lot of politicians come through the state, right? You're one of the first 4 states in the primary process, so everybody comes here. And you hear a lot of my Republican colleagues talk about family values, right? They just love families. Can't stay up, every night they worry about families. That's all they worry about. Now, you know and I know what they mean when they talk about family values. What they mean by family values, essentially, is to tell every woman in America that she cannot control her own body. I disagree. That very difficult, I respect other people's point of view. And we all know we have friends who differ with us. And I respect other people's point of view. But to my mind, that very important decision must be left to the woman and not the government. And when my Republican colleagues talk about family values, what they are saying is that our gay brothers and sisters should not have the right to marry or enjoy the other benefits of American society. I disagree with them. And I know that this is a sensitive issue. I know it. And I know there are people who disagree. But I believe if we are going to talk about equal rights, let's talk about equal rights for all Americans. Now, I have 4 great kids and 7 beautiful grandchildren. My wife Jane and I have been married for 27 years. And if you talk to my wife, that is all she talks about is family, family, family. We believe in family. But our view of family values is a little bit different than my Republican colleagues. Now let me tell you about my views on family values. I believe that it is an international embarrassment that the United States of America is the only major country on earth, the only one, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave for its people. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Let me explain what it means. I see a mom there with a beautiful baby. What it means is that in South Carolina, in Vermont, and all over this country, today, a baby is being born. And for those of you who are parents, you know what an extraordinary moment in your life that is. Very few things will top that. If that mom and dad have sufficient income, mom is able to stay home with that baby, get to love the baby, get to know the baby, get to nurture the baby for months. If that mom does not have sufficient income, that baby, for all intent and purposes, is separated from the mom because mom has got to go back to work. That is not a family value. And that is why I think the United States should join other major countries and say that families in this country
can't stand the heat, get off the test track. Get the Mercedes-Benz you've been burning for at the summer event going on now at your authorized Mercedes-Benz dealer. Hurry before this opportunity cools off.
Wells.
That's right.
And then you would pick up a Diet Coke for me. It was the sweetest thing.
I also, there was this convenience store across the street from us at Salon. They had a seemingly unlimited supply of in your life you
Okay, hey guys. Hopefully we're not echoing. We're working out some audio issues to come back and tell you guys what's going on. Thanks for sticking with us. We did indeed lose the feed. We were bringing you the MSNBC feed because we wanted to hang out with you guys while we watch Bernie. So that's why we're doing that, and we were relatively confident that it might be interrupted at some point. So we're pretty sure that's what happened. But and you got a Mercedes commercial in there while you were watching. uh, Nis is still with us. He has not slept at all, and he's jumped back in. It's afternoon there in Denmark, right, Nis? Like 5 p.m., 6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Cool. Well, good morning, good afternoon to you. Welcome back.
Thank you, John.
I am hearing an echo, guys. I don't know if that's going out live.
I'm hearing quite a bit of an echo too.
All right, so we're looking for that. Anyway, we could talk. I think maybe let us know in the chat if you guys are hearing an echo because we're hearing it back in our feed. So if it's bothering you guys, we're going to work it out. If you don't hear it, I think we're okay now. Maybe I don't know. Oh, great. If we've got it, let's bring it in. John, you're definitely echoing. So yeah, but that's for sure. If we've got another feed, we're going to bring that in for you. If you know of a Periscope feed that's happening, drop it in the chat. We'll bring that in. Sometimes that's the only feed that we can get. You guys really want to watch it and jump over to MSNBC, we understand if it's still on. But we're glad you're sticking with us because we're going to talk about we're going to be back later this afternoon. He's going to be at another rally at 2:30. I believe. Is there Janine? Where is he? Janine, are you with us? Janine's here today.
I am here.
Hi. When
Hi.
is he this afternoon?
He will be on later on tonight. We're going to go live at 6 o'clock Eastern, and Bernie goes on at 7.
Oh, we've got a stream back, guys. I think I'm hearing it. Okay. We're going to let him talk.
What kind of system is it? You tell me. When one family, the Koch brothers, extreme right-wing family, will spend $900 million in this election cycle, that is more money than either the Democratic Party will spend or the Republican Party will spend. When one family spends more money than either of the two major political parties, my friends, that's not democracy, that is oligarchy, and that has got to change. Now, I've not made many campaign promises during this campaign, but here's one I will repeat to you. Any nominee of mine to the United States Supreme Court will, before that name is sent to the Senate, will be very loud and clear in saying that their first order of business will be to rehear that case and overturn Citizens United. But we have got to go further than that. I am a passionate believer in democracy. I know that democracy has not always been practiced in the South, and we're going to change that too. But I believe that every person, regardless of their political point of view, who wants to run for office should be able to run for office without begging the wealthy and powerful for money. And that is why I believe in public funding of elections. Let me touch on another issue regarding democracy. Simone mentioned a little while ago that we recently celebrated. I was at an event with Martin Luther King III. We were celebrating the 50th anniversary of the enormously important Voting Rights Act signed by Lyndon Johnson. But as Simone mentioned, 2 years ago, the Supreme Court gutted in a very significant way that legislation. And right now, as a result of that Supreme Court decision, All over the country, not just the South. All over the country, you have Republican governors and legislatures who are working day and night to make it harder for people to vote. Okay? Now, to me, in a sense, this is personal, and I'll tell you why. I have run for office many times in my state. I've lost sometimes, most of the times I've won. But it has never occurred to me, honest to God, when I've been a mayor, when I've been a congressman, never occurred to me to figure out a way that I can make it harder for people to vote because they might vote against me. I have enough confidence in my ideas that I go out to people. You don't want to vote for me? Don't vote for me. You want to defeat me? Defeat me. But I am not going to go out of my way to make it impossible for you to vote because you're going to vote against me. And let's be clear, people who try to prevent others from voting simply do not have the confidence in their ideas. If you believed in your ideas, you'd want more people to vote, not fewer people. And I think from the bottom of my heart, these are political cowards. If you're afraid of people voting, don't get involved in politics. Do something else for a living. And that is why we've introduced legislation that would make it easier, move toward the point where every person in this country 18 years of age or older is registered to vote. End of discussion. And we're not going to have situations where on voting day people have to stand online 6 hours to cast their ballot. Now, when we talk about the economy, we all understand that the United States exists today in a very competitive global economy. And if we're going to do well as a nation, we need to have the best educated workforce in the world. That's what we need. We need the best schools. We need the best teachers. That's what we need. It troubles me immensely that in our great country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, that there are hundreds of thousands of bright young people, qualified young people, who want a college education but cannot get that education for one reason: their family lacks the money. In my view, that is not only terribly unfair to those people who may want to become doctors or scientists or engineers or teachers or whatever. We're pulling the ladder right from underneath them. But it is absurd when we talk about the future of the American economy. We need to tap all of the intellectual capabilities we can find. And that is why I have introduced legislation and will fight for as president a bill which makes every public college and university in America tuition free. Today in Burlington, Vermont, there are kids in the 4th and 5th grade, like my family, whose parents never went to college, and actually we did not know many people who went to college. These kids are growing up in an environment where not only their parents never went to college, they don't know anybody who went to college. And these kids are in the 4th grade and the 6th grade, and instinctually they understand they're never going to make it to the middle class. Why should they study hard? Why should they do their homework? They're going nowhere. Their friends have dropped out of school. If we can can make it clear to every kid in America that if you do your homework, if you pay attention, you will be able to get a college education regardless of the income of your family. This will revolutionize education from kindergarten to graduate school. And when we talk about higher education, there is another issue that we've got to address, and that is the absurdity of millions of Americans, some young and some not so young, who are being crushed by outrageous levels of student debt and high interest rates. Now, what sense is it that people who go to college come out of college, and we just heard a speaker talk about that a moment ago, $40,000 in debt. I talked to a young woman in Burlington, Vermont. Her crime in life was that she went to medical school to practice medicine with low-income people. I think that that is a noble attribute, not a crime. But she left school $300,000 in debt. There is a dental crisis in America all over this country. People can't find affordable, accessible dental care. We need more dentists. Talk to a young woman in Iowa, graduated dental school, $400,000 in debt. You talk to people all over the country that pay 20-25% of their income, paying off their debt. They can't get married, they can't get a car, they can't get a home. That's pretty crazy stuff. And that is why part of this legislation says the following. At a time when you can refinance your home at 2 or 3%, why are you paying 8% interest rates on your student debt? You're going to let people refinance their debt. And by the way, the United States government should not be in the business of making billions of dollars in profit for working class families on student debt. And that's it. When we talk about our responsibilities as parents, as adults, as citizens, there is perhaps nothing more important than to understand that we have got to leave this planet in a way that is habitable for our kids and our grandchildren. The debate is over. I want you all to know it. The debate is over, and I'm sitting on both the Energy Committee and the Environmental Committee of the Senate. The scientific community is virtually unanimous. Climate change is real. Climate change is caused by human activity. Climate change is already causing devastating problems in this country and all over the world. And what the scientists tell us, if we do not get our act together in the short period by transforming our energy system, this planet will face severe problems in the years to come. More drought, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances, more rising sea levels, more acidification of the ocean, as well as CIA tells us that we would have people fighting for limited resources. How am I going to go right now? How am I going to drink water? All over the world, this is not because of a fight for limited natural resources. We have the moral responsibility to lead the world, working with China, working with India, working with Russia, lead the world in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainability. Their budget calls for the elimination of the Affordable Care Act and massive cuts in Medicaid. The results will be that 27 million more Americans time when families are struggling to figure out how to send their kids to college, the public budget cut $19 billion in the Pell Grant program over a 10-year period. That's a major form of government scholarship program. At a time when millions of families are struggling to put food on the table, they made massive cuts in nutrition programs for hungry kids. And then to add insult to injury, they gave $250 billion in tax breaks to the top 0.2%. Now what we have got to do is get the word to our Republican friends. If they are working class, middle class people, they should not be supporting a budget which punishes their kids, their families, and gives tax breaks to billionaires. I don't care if a CEO of a large corporation hates me. I can understand that. Doesn't bother me a bit. I'm used to that. But what does bother me a lot is when working class people who are struggling every day to make ends meet keep voting for people who make the rich richer and everybody else poor. That I don't understand. That bothers me a lot. So needless to say, I think the Republican priorities are way out of touch with where America is. Among many other things, you're hearing many Republican candidates talking about cutting Social Security. Well, let me tell you something. When you got millions of seniors in this country living on $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 a year, we're not going to cut Social Security, we're going to expand Social Security. Touch on another enormously important issue that's been getting, justifiably so, a lot of discussion in recent months. And that is, when we talk about making the United States the kind of nation that we must become, we must talk about ending institutional racism and making major reforms to our criminal justice system. Now, in this discussion, there is good news and there's bad news. The good news is if we were assembled right here in this school 30 years ago, and somebody said, you know, I think the United States, the people of our country have matured enough to overcome our historical legacy of racism, and by the year 2008, we would elect an African-American president. If 30 years ago people were sitting in the room, somebody said, you know, maybe in 2008 we're going to elect some black guy to be president, very few people would have believed it. But we should be proud, no small thing, that in fact the people of this country, by pretty big numbers, decided to look at the ideas and the character of the candidate rather than the color of his skin. And they elected Obama. And you could like Obama, you could not like Obama, but bottom line is we should be judging people based on their ideas, not on the color of their skin, and the United States did that. And that's a good thing. But there is obviously bad news. And the bad news is, as everybody in this room knows, that racism remains a much too real part of American life. And in that regard, I am not just talking about the sickness of a man who could walk into a Bible study class in Charleston, pray with people in the room and discuss the Bible, and then take out a gun and kill 9 of those people. That is something literally beyond my comprehension. I don't understand how that could happen and what kind of sickness would allow that to happen. And I'm not even talking about the hundreds of hate groups that exist all over this country. Groups whose sole reason for existence, if you can believe it, is to foment hate. Can you imagine being in a group whose only reason in life is to teach others to hate other people, to hate people who are black, to hate people who are immigrants, to hate people who are gays, to hate people who are Jews? Hard to imagine that hundreds of these types of groups exist in America today, but they do. And by the way, the federal government should be taking a very hard look at these groups when they break the law. But when we talk about institutional racism, we have got to understand that we are talking about people like Sandra Bland and Michael Brown and Rekia Boyd and Eric Garner and Walter Scott and Freddie Gray and many other unarmed African Americans who died at the hands of police officers or in police custody. Let me be very clear that as President of the United States, no one will fight harder to end racism and reform our broken criminal justice system than I will. Now, reforming criminal justice is a huge issue worthy of a whole lot of discussion. We don't have time today, but let me touch on a few points. And let me begin by saying, I was a mayor for 8 years. I worked very closely with our police department. Being a cop today is a very, very difficult job, and the vast majority of police officers are trying to do their best. And cops, and I learned this, live under enormous stress. Divorce rate is high, pay is not particularly good, scheduling is crazy. All right? But, having said that, it goes without saying that police officers, like any other public official, must be held accountable when they break the law. I want to see our police departments well paid. It is a tough job, and many police officers are working for poor wages, poor working conditions. I want to see our police departments move into the area of community policing, becoming part of the community rather than being seen as an oppressor. And when I watch on television some local police departments who have heavily militarized all kinds of this fancy equipment which makes it look like they are an invading army, that's wrong. People have got to perceive that the police are part of them, that they can go to the local police officer, there's a crack house down the street, or this guy's dealing drugs, have confidence. That's the kind of police department we need, not a police department that comes in with tanks and heavy-duty equipment. And by the way, we have got to move now also, you all know the police departments are run by local governments, not the federal government. But federal government can play an important role by coming up with models that work. And one model that we have got to push is that police departments should represent the diversity of the community, should look like the community. As I mentioned, being a police officer is very difficult. I remember vividly seeing the situation when I was mayor. There was a fight that broke out downtown Burlington. Blew me away. We had one cop, just one cop. He was going nuts, trying to separate people, minimizing force. Did an extraordinary job, minimizing force. What we need in this country is to make sure that using the gun is the last resort, not the first resort. Getting back to the fact that we have more people in jail than any other country on earth, we need to take a hard look at the so-called war on drugs. I find it remarkable that many young Americans have received a criminal record for the crime of smoking marijuana, but not one major Wall Street executive has been prosecuted for causing the collapse of the American economy. Now, all of this stuff, the drug stuff, is complicated stuff, and I'll be talking about it more in the campaign. But we have too many people in jail for non-violent crimes, people who are not a threat to our society. You know, we want people who are going to be killing people to be locked up, but not people who have committed non-violent crimes. Too many lives have been destroyed. Not everybody realizes this, you know. You get sent away for a year or two, people say, well, yeah, it's too bad, a year or two, but you're going to come back and you're going to get back into life and go out and get a job and go to school. That's not the way it works. You know, you go to jail for a year or two, then you come out, you try to get a job, and the employer says, where you been, young man, for the last 2 years? Oh, I've been in jail. Have a nice day. Hard to get a job. And then if you can't get a job and earn some money, what happens to you? You end up going back to the same people you got in jail trouble with in the first place. End up in jail again. We need a path out of jail that does not result in people coming back into jail. So there's a lot that has to be done in terms of criminal justice. And I'll tell you one other thing, and a lot of people have talked to me about this, and we're going to introduce legislation when Congress reconvenes in September. And that is, we must end the injustice and the absurdity of private corporations making profits by building and running prisons. So we need to make sure that people are not profiteering off of the suffering and misery of other people. So this whole issue of criminal justice is a huge issue. I've only touched on a few of the points. But we have a lot of work to do in this area. Now let me touch on another issue that I think is enormously important. When we talk about bringing America together, all of us should appreciate there are 11 million undocumented people in this country. I was in Phoenix last month and I talked to some young kids, Hispanic kids, grew up in the United States of America, tears in their eyes, fearful that they would be deported or their parents would be deported. We need to provide legal protection to undocumented people. We need to move toward immigration reform, comprehensive immigration reform, and a path towards citizenship, in my view. All of you know that there was a great debate in 2002 and 2003 and stuff about going to war in Iraq. I voted against the war in Iraq. And if you go to YouTube and look at what I said when I was in the House of Representatives, sadly, much of what I predicted would happen did happen in terms of the destabilization. Where we are right now, as you know, the President and Secretary Kerry have negotiated an agreement with Iran and with 5 other nations. It is not a perfect agreement, but I support the agreement because I think we have got to do everything that we can to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear weapon, but do it in a way that does not lead to war. I have seen the cost of war. I have seen 6,700 brave men and women lose their lives in Iraq and Afghanistan. I have seen folks come home without arms and legs. And I think we have got to do everything that we can to create the goals that we want, accomplish the goals that we want, Iran without a nuclear weapon, but do it in a way that does not result in another war. And I feel very strongly about that. All right, let me conclude, and then we'll open it up for questions, my remarks by asking you all to think big, not small. I want you to envision what this country can become. In my view, and this is not pie in the sky, this is not utopian thinking, I don't have any magical formula to make everybody happy and to live to 200 years. Don't know how to do that. But we can at least do what many other countries around the earth are doing. We can do what the wealthiest country in the history of the world should be doing. We can live in a country where health care is a right of all people, not a privilege. We can do that. We can demand that the wealthiest people in this country and the largest corporations in this country and Wall Street start paying their fair share of taxes. We can create a child care system so that when mom and dad go out to work, they know that their kids have the highest quality child care and pre-K education possible. Yes, we can do that. And we can create a nation in which all people can get a college education regardless of the income of their families. And we can, not going to be easy, but we can, if we work on it, create a society in which all people, regardless of their color, of their skin, regardless of the country they were born in, regardless of their sexual orientation, regardless of whether they are a woman or a man, we can create a country of equal rights for all of our people. So what this campaign is about is not just electing me. What this campaign more significantly is about is creating a political revolution where working people, middle-class people, stand up together, get involved in the political process together, and say that in this great country, our government belongs to all of us and not just a handful of billionaires. Thank you for being part of that political revolution. Thank you all. Okay. Phil, we can take a few questions. We're gonna move down the road. I got one here. Okay, one at a time. Phil, you got one? Okay, sir.
Hi, Bernie. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
What do you think about removing oil, gas, and coal subsidies and giving those to solar and wind power?
Well, matter of fact, we've introduced legislation to pretty much do that. The idea that we are subsidizing an industry that's 100 years old and enormously profitable and which is destroying the planet, not a great idea. We've got legislation on that.
Senator, thank you for coming to Sumter. I came in with some questions that you pretty much hit on a lot of them, so I appreciate that. And only have one question. Well, first of all, I organized a town hall meeting a few weeks ago called Poets Respond to Race. and we addressed some of the things that you discussed, and I'm organizing another one in October to discuss race in education. I teach at a historically black college here in Sumter, Morris College, and I wanted to know your assessment of how Congress views historically black colleges.
Well, I can tell you how I feel about historic black colleges, and I think they play a vitally, vitally important role in educating African Americans in this country, and I will fully support the historical black colleges playing an enormous role. Hi.
Working for a small business, working for a small business, I'm concerned that jumping the minimum wage so quickly may hurt the small businesses we have 7 employees, and we pay okay, but $15 an hour is a pretty big spike for a business owner.
Yep. All right. That's a fair question, and what we intend to do is not do it immediately. As you heard me say, it will come over a period of years. But understand, it'll be difficult. It may be difficult for your small business, but the guy down the street who's competing with you is also going to have to pay that same increase. It's not just you. But I think at the end of the day, any public policy has repercussions, and nothing is 100% perfect. But at the end of the day, we have got to say that too many people in this country are working for wages that are inadequate. And I think we've got to, right now some cities and states are doing it. I think as a nation we do it. It's fair to the small businesses. Other questions?
Right here, sir, behind you.
Yeah.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My name is Charles Patton, and I'm the senior class president at Sumter High School. And I was just wondering, in keeping with the theme of education and what we'll face after college, what can I say to my senior class that would assure us a solid opportunity in the workplace and job advancement as a result of a Bernie Sanders presidency?
That's an excellent question. I think for a start, there's no magical answers to anything, and I don't want anyone to think I snap my fingers and everything is perfect. But the first thing, where'd Charles go? There you go, okay. The first thing you can say is that my administration would be an administration of people which A, would reflect the diversity of America, B, which is focused on the needs of working families and the middle class, not Wall Street and big money interests. All right, so my goals would be to make sure that we create many millions of decent paying jobs, and I mentioned to you, rebuilding our infrastructure will have a ripple effect that can create up to 13 million jobs. In terms of small businesses, instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we're going to pay attention to small and medium-sized businesses so they can go out and employ people in their community. In terms of trade, we are going to stand up to corporate America and say, you're not going to shut down plants in South Carolina and move abroad. You're going to be reinvesting in America and creating jobs here. Also, tell your fellow students that we're going to work hard to make sure that every kid in that school, regardless of his or her income, can get a college education if they have the ability to do so, regardless of the income of their family.
Hi, Bernie. How you doing?
Good.
Hi, my name is Daniel Knapp, and I just got out of the Marine Corps after 6 years, and I was just wondering. Thanks, everyone. But I was just wondering, because you're one of the only people that is opposed to spending trillions of dollars on pointless wars that, how many people have died in. What would your suggestions be for the defense budget as far as what would you plan to use it on?
Sure. The Defense Department today is the only agency of government that cannot sustain an independent audit. Did you know that? In other words, we spend about $600 billion on the military, a huge amount of money. And if you go to the Pentagon, you say, well, how many private contractors do you have? They don't know. Tell me about cost overruns. You know what that is? You have military contractors that come in and say, we're going to build this weapon system for $5 billion, ends up costing $15 billion. Who is held accountable? So to answer your question, right now, we spend more money on the military than the next 9 countries. Got that? Meanwhile, our kids can't go to college. We don't have health care for our people. And all over the world, like countries in Saudi Arabia, you know what they say? They say to President Obama, send combat troops into Iraq, because we in Saudi Arabia, we don't want our troops to get in. You guys, taxpayers, pay for it, and Marines lose their lives. I don't agree with that either. I think that maybe if all these countries in the Middle East are so worried about ISIS, why don't they get their hands dirty in the fight first? So to answer your question, do we need a strong defense? Yes. Should we be supportive of countries taking on ISIS? Yes. But should we treat the Department of Defense like we treat any other agency of government and make sure we're getting value for what we are spending and not overspending? I will tell you also, there is no major defense contractor that has not been convicted of fraud. Did you know that? Yeah, they negotiate things and they lie or reach the settlement with the government. So I believe in a strong defense, but I do not believe just in throwing more and more money in the Defense Department. Okay. Right here. Good.
Hi, Bernie. My name is Nico House. I'm also a veteran. I was a veteran in the Army, though. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for instilling hope back into politics, because we've been waiting a long time. And two, considering and reminiscing on how much success Obama had with having public figures and like public faces for certain policies, do you think because of how strong your platform is when it comes to students and college loans, that it might be good to have a consistent student face with a strong voice in order to convey that?
Yes, I do. Absolutely. I think in the last election in November, the reason Republicans did so well is voter turnout was abysmally low. Do you know what percentage of young people voted in the last election? 20%. 80% did not vote. Your point is well taken. Yes, we should have, and we are trying to do it. We're going to accelerate our efforts. I want millions of young people to get involved in this campaign and fight for free public college. Thank you for your point. All right, Phil, let's take where'd Phil go? All right, let's take a couple of more questions, because I think we got to head down the road. Ma'am?
Hi, sir. My name is Natalie Mason. I'm an active duty military member at Shaw Air Force Base.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to know where you stand on the cutting of military pay and benefits to active service members right now that's going on, and veterans.
Good. Very good. Okay, you see, getting back to your question, where'd the Marine go? There you are. What's your name again? Daniel. All right, same question in a sense. This is interesting. We have folks in Congress prepared to vote for weapons systems that the Pentagon tells us they really don't need. You follow what I'm saying? They don't need in order to fight terrorism. And yet these very same people are prepared to cut benefits for active military and for our veterans. So when we talk about defense spending, the first thing that we should be understanding is that we are not going to cut benefits or programs for members of the armed forces or for our veterans, okay? Thank you very much. Ma'am, thanks for the question and for your service to our country. Yes, last question.
Yes, I'm a teacher in Sumter, and I see over 100 students a day. And I fully support having free tuition to any students who want to go to college. But my concern is, with the fact that a lot of our schools are funded with a large amount of property taxes, the poor schools stay poor,
right,
and the rich schools stay rich. And I want to know, will you be able to help us, the public educators, get the next generation ready for the free tuition colleges?
Hey, Phil. Phil, give him the mic again. I want to ask him a question. I'm sorry, your name is?
Oh, my name is David Smith.
David. In Sumter, and I know I'm not picking on Sumter, it's true in Burlington as well, do you find a lot of low-income kids who are kind of giving up on education?
Yes, it's one of the biggest problems I face as an educator. Okay. Not just a lack of talent, but a lack of students who feel like they could make it if they tried.
Okay, and let me ask you another question, if you could. If somebody wants to apply to get a job teaching, in your school system? What's the starting pay?
It's a little over 30,000 a year.
Okay. Well, what we have got to do is, as a nation, we have got to understand that the future of this country depends upon a well-educated public. And we have got to applaud people like David. Today we have heard from heroes and heroines who are in the armed forces, who we respect and love for their service, but teachers are doing also enormously important work. So David, to answer your question, you know that there is a massive effort underway to destroy public education in America. You understand that, okay? And it is a terrible idea, because at the end of the day, when you privatize education, what will happen is the families that have the money will be able to send their kids to fine schools, and what's left over will be inadequate funding for the vast majority of people who are poor or working class. Now, I should also tell you that we're working hard to end what I consider a disastrous policy of No Child Left Behind. And this is one area where there appears to be bipartisan support. Republicans and Democrats understand this is a failed policy. But to answer your basic question, if there's a future to be had in this country, we need to make sure that every kid in your school gets the best education possible. And you're asked to deal with just enormous problems with dysfunctional family, with kids who are hungry. All right? You can't do it all. But at the very least, we should make sure that every child, regardless of income, in this country gets the highest quality education possible. So, in fact, they will be able to get a higher education if they want. All right. All right, we've got to head down the road. It's a busy day. This is a great turnout, and I love doing this stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming out. Thank you for all you do. We'll see you soon.
Okay, great to hear back from Bernie Sanders in the town hall Q&A setting. I think it's been a while since we've had a feed with a Q&A from the audience. Great questions. What did you guys think? Do you have any questions, or do you need something to be explained or extrapolated on in the chat? Then just put in on the chat feed, and we will try to get back to you as quick as possible. Well, I really liked his points about the guys in the service and making the comparison to the teachers as also being in service to the country with the job they're doing with the nation's kids. It's pretty much the same value system that we have here in Scandinavia, looking at the teachers not just as people picking up a paycheck, but as public servants looking out for the best interest of our kids and helping them along the way.
Yeah, Nis, I want to jump in there on that, and please, everybody in the live audience, let me know if you're hearing an echo on my voice. But what I've heard in the past is they call teachers' jobs a vocation, so they shouldn't expect a lot. It's a vocation. You're supposed to like that. Well, it should be considered one of the most honored positions in our country. People who teach should be put on pedestals instead of revealing. We promote violence over education. And I do not understand that. So I just want to say teachers are not vocational workers. They should be thought of as the most esteemed individuals in our country. I get the feeling that in other nations, particularly yours, they are thought of that way.
Okay, great point. I mean, if you are lucky enough to get a job that is a vocation or a calling for you, then definitely you should be able to pursue that job, pursue that dream, that career. But to say that because you believe in it so much that you would have to accept a pay cut is ridiculous, in my opinion.
Yep.
Oh, well, you know, you do it if you're supposed to do what you love, right? That's what a vocation is something you're doing something that you love to do. And why shouldn't you get paid a living wage or a good wage to do it instead of being demonized by the other side or the right or whoever, conservatives about with unions, complaining about teacher unions and that unions have their problems. I don't disagree with that, throughout the years and even now. But Bernie is all about collective bargaining and being able to negotiate wages and we're getting Nis, we're getting some folks. Ms. Gracie, she wants to know what elaborate on the quality of life in Denmark. Is it free college in Denmark? That was a big one today. They were great questions, but the college question seemed to get a huge reaction. What's it like in Denmark?
Well, in Denmark, there's quite a bit of optimism about the future because we have a lot of upward social mobility. I don't think of our education or healthcare system as being free. I think of it as being you pay it forward, to coin a phrase. You pay it forward to other people. So for me, attending college or university is free. But then after I'm done at college or university, I pay for it through my taxes. And then through my taxes, I also pay for others to be able to experience the same way. So you basically give people a leg up, and then afterwards, those people give the next people a leg up. So you're paying it forward for the next generation all the time. So no, the right-wingers, they always counter free healthcare or free education with, it's not free, you pay for it over your taxes. Well, that's true, but because the payment is so delayed and over such a long period of time, it is essentially free for you when you're doing it, and then you help the next generation get this, getting the same treatment.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is what you would call a socialist principle, I would say, that you are Social Security basically works in that respect. We're basically taking care of the folks that had come before us, similar type of a deal. But I think that's what a society is supposed to do. How can we not educate our kids? It's just we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're talking about guns all the time, but our education system is falling apart. We're dropping against so many other countries on math and science, and they just want to cut more and more money. I mean, we've been following the Diet high school problem and the hunger strike, which I think we're now in day 6 of the hunger strike for Diet. And there's a call in, I think, today at 2 p.m. I don't know if that's Eastern, regarding these about a dozen teachers that are trying to save the last public school in this area of Chicago, this brownstone neighborhood, historic neighborhood in Chicago. The last public school is losing funding. So we're just at all levels. And John was saying how it's it's like well, what you said, John, made me think that basically our school system is like it's the school to prison complex. You know, they look like prisons, number one. Most of your public schools all look like prisons. And that seems to just be the trend. You know, you just want to get people, you know, keep kids busy for 12 years so they don't get in trouble, and then, or, you know, let them get in trouble. And I mean, you know, you got judges throwing kids into juvenile systems for profit. You know, that's been proven. That guy's going to jail. So it's just unreal to me that we can't invest in our future and our kids. And I don't even have any kids, so, but we need to start thinking along those lines. Yes, I agree with you completely. And we are, you know, we have to pay for it, and we always do. I mean, like with the Affordable Care Act, the middle class is basically picking up the tab, not the rich people, which is, you know, what the middle class does. We, you know, we're the middle.
Hey, Dave.
Yeah. Hey, John.
Couple things. There was a question by Julie Cook, and Nis may have answered it, but I wanted to push it back to him real quick. Basically, she asks, does Denmark or similar economies believe the U.S. is too big for the change talked about by Bernie? And before you answer, I just want to say that I think Bernie has stated that big makes it better, that we actually have more resources to get it done. And I've heard this excuse that, oh, smaller countries, a lot of Americans say, oh, smaller countries, that's why they can do it. I think that's crap. So I'd like to know what your opinion on is that. Is there a feeling over there that the U.S. is too big to make these changes?
Well, I would be very speaking on behalf of all Danes or all citizens of all small countries, but my own opinion is that being small can serve as an advantage because you have an easier feeling of community around similar things. But that doesn't mean it can't be done in America. In America, where you have a strong federal government, it would be relatively easy to implement changes throughout the states. But that being said, I would encourage the grassroots movements to make sure that the changes aren't only being made from the top on down, but from the bottom on up. So, for example, if you have the Voter Act that was a part of which was struck down by the Supreme Court, then the reason that could affect all 50 states at once was because the Voter Act only was upheld by the Supreme Court. But if the Voter Act by the grassroots movements of the 60s had also been implemented in each separate state, then it would have been a lot harder to overturn and then impact. So I do believe that you have to build from the ground on up as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And to address one other question, and this is really, Razor HDD said this, guys, seriously, what is Bernie going to do to encourage kids to go to school? He didn't exactly answer the question at the end, and I agree, you know, encouraging kids to go to school is going to take a massive reformation of the school system, in my opinion. But I'm going to pass that back to Dave, and then maybe Nis can tell us about some things they do with their school system that make it more interesting. Dave, where do you want to go with that?
Well, you know, it's a feeling that what's the point? You know, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of jobs out there. There's some statistics that say that the millennials right now coming out of college aren't, you know, it's the lowest amount of money they've been making coming out of college for years. So it's not very, you know, it's not very optimistic out there for kids going to school and wanting to go to school. It doesn't seem like there's a benefit to it to just be all of a sudden you're saddled with this burden of school debt that you know, I think we've got about 7,000 left on Chella's, but I'm not sure. You know, and a lot of people just don't pay their school debts anymore either, which is just, you know, that's crazy too. And the whole system needs to be redone, and we need to benefit. I think if we can get some legislation done, if Bernie can get some legislation through that's going to really reform the student loan system. And we're going to be talking to some folks about the student debt crisis in future shows. So stay tuned for that. But, you know,
Dave?
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in here for a second on something you were talking about.
Hi, Janine. Yes, go ahead.
As far as encouraging, you know, people to go to school and everything, I worked in the IT field for a while, and I know that the number of kids going into college for IT took a very sharp decrease once a lot of jobs were being sent overseas or companies were doing outsourcing. And, I think that Bernie has proposed, a reduction in the number of, I think it's the H-1B visas, things like that, where we can start taking IT jobs and bringing them back into this country. And perhaps that would encourage more people to go back into that field and to go to college and to learn IT. So maybe that's just one example, but I think there are some things that we can do.
Well, you bring up the visa issue, and Bernie does talk about that, and he gets some flack about it as being anti-immigrant, talking about these companies that basically hire tech people to come over and work for them. When you're right, we should be encouraging folks here to be learning those skills and getting those jobs. But I think it comes down to it's actually cheaper to do that than to hire somebody over there. So it's a form of exporting jobs. It's a protectionist sort of feeling. Hey, oligarchy fell on cue. It always does.
It always does.
Yeah. But so I think that needs to be reformed. I don't know what the answer is to get kids back interested in school. I really don't. There was the whole the colleges are the big. They're talking about how colleges are so politically correct now, and it's actually coming from the student. It's coming from these kids, and the professors are like, we didn't want to cancel this speaker, but the kids did because they didn't want him to step on any toes. And so the idea of these liberal bastions of expression, and you're supposed to bring in people you don't agree with necessarily to challenge your views. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is.
I think that there needs to be, there needs to be hope for kids going to school, that when they're done, that there are going to be jobs out there for them. If not, then.
So, I may be encouraging, maybe there's legislation that can go through that will encourage American corporations to hire, kids that are coming out of American citizens that are coming out. Maybe there's a tax break involved. I don't know what it is. But there's got to be a way to, and the conversation about, the Republicans love the idea of an open border. That's what Bernie got in trouble for saying, is that it's a conservative idea to have an open border so that we can have low-income wages here and bring in low-income workers. So to a certain degree, I think that's true. That the Republicans, they say they want to build up a wall, but really that would eliminate a huge labor force. And this idea that Trump is saying is that these anchor babies are using getting Social Security, they're getting Medicare. Look, you have to pay into Social Security and you have to pay into Medicare. It's not you pay into unemployment. These are not entitlement programs. They're it's stuff we pay for, like Nis was saying, we pay forward. So I don't know, Nis, jump in here, or Rich Green's on the line too. Rich, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit more of a question towards Niz about, he mentioned the conflict, or that one of the points that the right will often bring up is that it's not free. You have to pay for it in colleges, or you have to pay for it in taxes. One of the other points that comes up often is, well, if we give them free college education, they just won't care about it, and they won't try, and they'll just think of it as 4 years of partying, or of government-sponsored partying and stuff like that. So coming from a country that already has the free education, I'm curious whether that's been an issue there, or whether that's totally not an issue for them, or where they stand on that.
Well, they have a point. It's not systemic. It's not the average person, but of course, college is your 5 years of partying, but it's also 5 years of socializing. It's 5 years of studying hard to get good grades, to get a job afterwards. So, yeah, of course, people, when they can start taking things for granted, won't work as hard for it. That's a perfectly valid point to make. But as the right here in Denmark is coming after education, has been for all of my life, you don't take it for granted because there's always these people trying to take it away or threatening to take it away. Plus, you don't take for granted that you get a job after the education is over. So you have to get good grades to get that job afterwards, especially if you want your dream job. So there's a point to it, but it's in no way something that can debunk the idea of free education. Another interesting thing that free education has done is, especially because you have a government stipend to live off while you're during your education, not unlimited stipend, about 7 years max, where you have to repay a portion of it after you're done with your education. But because of that stipend, a lot of people has elected to starting their families while in school. So when they get out of school and go into the marketplace, they don't have to take too much time off to start a family when they go into the workplace. So actually that has indirectly benefited business.
Oh, that's fascinating. I also have a curiosity about what do you all do to deal with students that when they get into college, they're not engaging the way that they should, and they're basically failing. What kind of counter or safe measures do you have around that?
Well, fellow students are one of the best measures against that, but we also have at the universities through the Department of Education, we have funding for people who are having trouble either with socializing or with the burden of studying. We have funding for those people to get help from other students, where that student get a small raise in stipend for helping his fellow student. With regards to motivation to complete your studies, well, you work very hard at it, so you don't want to give it up. Plus, you can, in Denmark, we have a relatively easy system for picking up your education at a later date. So if you give up and go out and get work as an unskilled laborer, then you can 5, 6, 10, 20 years later, you can go back to the university and finish up your education. So you can take a break and come back to it.
Yeah,
I don't
I'd
know
like
if
to,
that answered in full.
Can I just jump in real quick? I just want to say something that I think a lot of people are missing about the American education system, and I don't have a camera available for me right now. We kind of set this up fast. But here's the deal, guys. Our institutionalized college system is designed to focus on sports, okay? Everything about our college system promotes sports, promotes college activities, which focus on sports, because there's money in sports. So there really isn't a focus in our college system on education or doing anything with that education, because really all they want are sports. It's about money there. If we remove the money from the college education system and focus on education, then students will grow up learning that their education has value, that they want it, that they need it, that it's important. You don't take something for granted when you actually learn that it has value in this country. And right now, a college education has very little value because there are no jobs for people with college educations. And even when you have one and there might be a job, you're going to start at a crappy wage and know that you're climbing a career ladder and probably doing something you really didn't want to do. So
and you're already 50 grand in debt. You're already in debt as soon as you're out. So.
Yeah, you're already 50 grand in debt. And what's your point? Now I got to work the rat wheel for the rest of my life to pay it back.
Well, that's why that's why the doctors are in the pockets of the pharmaceutical industry, because they got to pay off those damn student loans.
Yep. I mean, I'm soaked in debt myself for my college education that I started at the age of 30. You know, so I you know.
Can I ask a question real quick about your student loans?
Sure.
Yeah.
How does it work? When you start taking your student loans, what rate are they at, and do the interest start running immediately when you start your student loans?
The rate depends. So for me, I took out a massive number of student loans over probably, well, over 6 years to pay for my education. And with each one, they make it really easy, or they did at the time, to borrow the money. And the rates were anywhere from 2% to, I think at one point, one of them was a 13% interest rate. Because it was actually, some of my loans came through Bank of America. They make this very interesting. The bank is happy to loan you that college money, right? And then you're stuck paying them back at whatever crazy interest. You can refinance sometimes, but for the most part, you're just, that's what it's at.
But does the interest start running immediately when you take out the loan?
It depends on all the loans. I mean, yeah, usually it does. Sometimes
I think as soon as you graduate, right? I think as soon as you're out, it starts.
Yep. And if you miss a payment, if you mess up,
oh
you're
yeah,
toast.
you
You're
go into
toast.
default. Yeah.
You're toast.
Yeah. You know, it's nuts. I think Sheila's around 5% on her stuff, but she's had three different loans, I think, over a period of time. You know, to go to USC. And we're still paying them off. And and she said if she would do it over again, she would have gone to Northridge, gone to a public school here. I mean, when I was just got out of high school, it was $9 a credit in a community college, and state school wasn't that much more, to be quite honest. Especially if you were a resident. And a non-resident, of course, it was hugely expensive to encourage more people, more local people in the state to take advantage of it. So your non-resident folks paid through the nose, basically. But yeah, I agree with you on the private for-profit university system. I mean, they're basically real estate companies, some of these universities in New York, and and the sports, you can't, and the players can't unionize. They tried to unionize, and apparently the judge struck that down and said,
yeah,
no.
that's criminal.
Yeah, I think that's totally criminal. The fact that they're not considered employees and they're treated like slaves.
Yeah, I think we need to address the price of books as well. I mean, my nephew's starting in the fall, and I think his books cost $2,000.
Oh, there's a very interesting. I don't know, John, if you saw this in Costa Rica on your trip down there, but there was a movement basically to copy the textbooks. And there was graffiti all up about this. I forget what the image was, but maybe somebody knows that can remind me, or John, if you saw it. But apparently we took this tour, and they were saying there was a huge movement against textbooks, private textbooks, and basically these kids would go to copy places and Xerox these huge textbooks and then pass them, share them with everybody. And it was a giant sort of rebellion against the private textbook problems down there, and it worked. It got them to make it accessible to everybody. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a huge. Textbooks are ridiculous. So, and that means you don't have to take like 3 jobs to pay for your education while you're studying, right? Because you get a stipend from the government, and which you have to pay part of it back. But and expand on that. What do you think about basic income? It's a conversation, that's starting to be talked about. I don't know if who does it out there. We got a lot of viewers from Sweden out there, and who does? Do you guys do a basic income? Is that what that is?
No, we don't. It's been suggested and come back into the political debate in various forms since the 70s, but it hasn't been enacted, and it hasn't even been close. But with regards to the student stipend, it isn't. It used to be enough that you could live off of it because we at the time had cheap student dorms, and cheap people would rent out rooms in their apartments relatively cheap in student cities. But as prices have risen, especially leading up to 2008, the stipend isn't enough to live off anymore. So you have to work at least part-time beside the stipend, or you have to take a student loan. Now, our student loans, when they were first invented back in the late 60s, as far as I recall, they were just like yours. They were bank financed, high interest started running right away, and an entire generation got caught up in so much that they couldn't get out of it. So the state realizing what had happened, they went in and they set up a commission where people, they could apply and get a very high reduction in their debt, at the very least applied a great part of the interest they paid towards paying off their loan. So what you guys are going through right now, we went through about 50 years ago. And we corrected our course, and we made sure that the student loans now are government run, that the interest doesn't compact while you're studying, and you don't have to start paying it off until after you're done with your education. And even then, you can postpone paying it off for a year. And even then, you can also, if you miss a payment, there are no big fines. You just catch up as best you can. It's only if you get really in arrears and keep on not paying that the government starts poking you with compounded interest and say, hey, start paying back.
Right.
That's
we
amazing.
We get those pokes too.
Hey Dave, I want to say one. I want to drop one thing in here real quick. Somebody mentioned before that this is, and we have guests to bring in. Chad is going to bring in Danny. Or we have Danny in here with us. He's gonna talk with us right now. But before we do that, I just want to say one thing. People keep talking about this education like we're going to make it free. Okay? It's not free. We're paying for it. Right now, we've put all our money into weapons. All we're saying is, how about we put that money into education for ourselves? We have plenty of weapons, all right?
Take a couple Oreos off the stack. Pentagon doesn't need all those Oreos.
Yep. We have had free military in this country for 200 plus years. It's time to take that and make them pay for it and put the money into what we give a shit about, okay? Which is education. Sorry, I just had to say that. This is what pisses me off more than anything, when people say, education shouldn't be free. Well, neither should our military, okay?
Well, I know the last real Republican, Republican with principles, told us about that, and the pie has just gotten bigger and bigger. Yeah, so we're gonna bring Danny, one of the 99 out there in Chicago area. He is he's trying to get a job as a teacher, so we're gonna try to get his perspective on what it's like in Chicago out of college to try to get a job as a teacher. So Danny, if you could unmute yourself Danny, join us. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what are your challenges trying to find a job as a teacher?
So, well, first I wanted to mention, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to mention that when you guys talk about education in the U.S., I mean, it's a very multifaceted issue, and there's a lot of components going on. I also want to touch up on what the last person just said about funding in education in the U.S. I think the last fiscal year, I think it was under 6% of the federal budget went to education. And it's actually been lower than that over the last 50 years before as well. As far as my experience in Chicago, I personally study a particular educational methodological approach that I think is more inclusive, because another issue that I think you guys bring up is when you talk about the disillusionment that goes on in U.S. education, you also have to talk about how culturally, for a lot of people, education is irrelevant now. I mean, at one point, going to college meant that you would have job security, but that's not really necessarily true now, especially if you go in
Oh, we might have lost Danny.
Yeah, I think we just lost I think he cut out.
We're gonna try to get Danny back. Continue his thought. But Danny Sprocka joining us from Chicago, talking a little bit about the education system and the challenges he's facing trying to get a job as a teacher with his particular style of teaching. And we're actually watching some stuff going on in the Chicago area. The Diet High School Fight for Diet is the hashtag, I believe. There's a hunger strike going on. Danny, are you back with us?
I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me though.
Yeah, I've got you back now. You dropped there for a second. Don't know why. But yeah, please go ahead and continue your thought.
Yeah. So basically, I think, like I said, it's a very multifaceted issue. I mean, in education they call it a pluralist field because there's so many factors going on. But as far as like people not being excited about education, the simple answer for that is that our education system doesn't work anymore.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. It's a, you doesn't, you know, what's it for? You look at it and you go, okay, I'm going to commit 4 years of my life to learn how to drink beer and open a can of paint, which I which I think are the two things that my wife definitely walked away with from her USC education. And then what do you do? Then
And so, you know, I think at my level, when I study early childhood education, you know, these kids aren't really aware of, you know, the overall societal impact of their being in school. But, you know, if you have an education system that is like increasingly privatized, increasingly based on standards and not content, and I should say context is better than content, but because we do have a system that's based on content, but you know, we're essentially creating an education system over the last 50 years in the U.S. that is so heavy on standards that we're really not teaching anymore.
Right.
You know?
Right. Yeah. The what is it? What is it? Core, whatever that stuff is.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. No, my brother just took a teaching position in L.A. and he'd be a great guy to have on the show too. But like he was talking about how he only has 15 minutes of essentially non-scripted time on his first day of class. You know, so what does that say about our education system?
No, yeah, you know, Danny, we got to wrap it up here. But thank you for joining us, and we're going to get you back. We're going to get you back in through Chad. Chad found you and hooked you up with us. This is an all-volunteer network. We want to talk to people that have issues, that support Bernie, that don't support Bernie. We threw this broadcast this morning together. I woke everybody up and said, "Come on, John, let's do it." So we found a stream, and we brought that to you.
I've tuned in for every single one so far. So
that's great,
Danny.
Yeah, thanks for your support, bro. Yeah, spread the word. We're trying to break the Bernie blackout. We had the MSNBC stream. We're going to be back on the air this afternoon. That's why we're going to wrap it up right now, because we're going to get ready for this afternoon's broadcast. We're going to go live at 6 p.m. Eastern. Harrison's going to be Nigel's going to be here. Harrison, I'm reading his name here. Nigel's going to be in. I think David B is going to be in too. He's going to co-host. And you know, certainly, Danny, you're welcome to continue the conversation later. But we're gonna bring you Bernie's stream. We're gonna have some banter, your chats. Thanks everybody for staying in the channel. We've had a lot of folks just hang on. A lot of thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up if you're so inclined, and help spread the word about Bernie 2016 TV. All volunteers, all spread out all over the nation and the world. Nis in Denmark. Hosting from Denmark. We had having a great conversation. Nis, thank you so much. Final thoughts this afternoon.
Well, I would agree with a lot of the things that's been said about education and the disparity. In Denmark, you start out at 6 months old. You start out in in a kindergarten of sorts. And then you go from there. When you're 6, you go to a school where you start in the zero grade. I don't know if that's correct to put, which is part-time kindergarten and part school. And then you go through the school system, and it's actually illegal to leave the school system. But in America, no. But the parents and the government has they have to take care of the children's education.
Right.
But when I look at America with so much poverty, and when mom and dad have to work 2 jobs each to just pay the bills, then of course it becomes tempting for a kid in school to say, I'm not learning anything anyway. Why don't I drop out and help out at home, pick up a paycheck and help mom and dad at home? So you have to both raise the minimum wage. You have to increase education. You can't just do one thing, and that's what I love about Bernie Sanders. He's not a one-issue president. He's an all-issues president, a holistic view of the world and the society, attack every problem at once.
And his message is real, and people, when they hear it, they're on board. Yep, I agree with that. Yep, I agree with that. So we're hopeful, we're optimistic. The momentum is happening, you know. We're going to talk about some stuff later this afternoon that we found in the news. 538 did an article on, okay, Bernie Sanders supporters, here's how he can win. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about some other stuff on the web later. Maybe we'll have some new videos, some new music videos to share with you guys. But this is Bernie 2016 TV, all volunteer network. Get involved on the Google Plus page. If you want to host a show, if you want to call in, we just rolled with that. We didn't know if we were going to get Danny in or not, if it was going to work. And that worked great. So we know we can do that now. So, sorry, John. We know we can do that now. So we're going to be bringing folks in like that too. So if you really have something you want to talk about passionately, well, we can bring you in. We can do it. So get involved. Get on the Google Plus page. If you want to be a reporter later today and Periscope, if you're going to, I think I lost my earpiece. If you're going to be a Periscoping later, or you know somebody that is, let us know. We'll bring that feed in too. Those are fun. So join us later. Let's see, it's 6 o'clock Eastern, right here on Bernie 2016 TV. Thanks, Rich. Thanks, John. Cynical Girl, with us from the very beginning. Thanks for watching us every time. And now apparently Danny, he's been watching us for for every time. So that's great. We've got a following here at Bernie 2016 TV. Janine, thanks for helping out today. Nis again. John, thanks for manning the helm, brother.
Always.
Hope everything's cool, bro. Hope everything's good on your end. We are, we're volunteering our time, and we are seriously going to talk about a Bernie truck. I got to get off this live broadcast because I got a guy to talk to about a truck. So, love you guys. Join us later. If we want to throw up Americans, go for it, or whatever you want to do.
I'm going to push this trailer that Janine made. I don't even know what's in it. It's a minute and a half. I'm just going to push it out. We'll see what it is.
Sweet. Do it.
We've got so much content that's been created by the 99 that I'm just going to run it, and we'll see where it is.
And we're going to start creating playlists of stuff you guys are creating so we can just run that on the channel, But go for it, John. Thanks a lot, guys. See you tonight.